LinkedIn Live today. As a bit of an introduction to start us off, I am Perrin and I'm Commercial Director here at Storm 3. We're a health tech specialist recruitment agency, and today we're going to be discussing the overriding topic of how to increase your health tech's business valuation through marketing. So we're very lucky to be joined by some amazing marketing leaders in the space, Erin, Nick and John. And just to start, I wanted to come to each of you to introduce yourselves and where you're from. So I'll come to you first, Erin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Fitzgerald. I'm the CMO at Sermo. Hopefully, there are many of you out there that know about Sermo and its capabilities. It's a quick, kind of frictionless access point to physician insights and engagement. And I've been with the company for about 4.5 years, and I've spent the last 12 or so in the health tech space. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. And then Nick, I'll come to you next.
Hi there, my name's Nick. I am the CMO at Flow Health, and I'm based out in Kent in the United Kingdom. And Flow, for those of you who don't know it, it's one of the biggest health apps in the world with just shy of 50 million monthly active users. It started life as a period tracker, but it's become a much more full-service female health app. Our purpose is to build a better future for female health by helping women harness the power of their body signals.
Thank you. And John, last but not least.
Yeah, hi, I'm John Bradley. I am VP of Marketing at Meru Health, which is a Finnish mental health tech company operating mainly in the US. And we are, we're trying to kind of reinvent the model of mental health care and treat it more as a treatable condition instead of a chronic one. So really trying to reinvent this through some new science and some mind-body connections and wearable devices and all the bells and whistles of health tech. And I've been in health tech for about a decade now, and that's after a 20-something career in media. So there was a fair bit of a pivot there about a decade ago.
Nice. Thank you so much, everyone. So I suppose the first thing that I wanted to kind of ask, and it's something that we've all discussed like separately and in different conversations, but we've all come to this topic of like narrative, so the sort of brand narrative and marketing narrative when you are building a brand in health tech, but I suppose in any area. And I think I wanted to just come to each of you on your opinions on why a defined narrative is so business critical. Again, I'll come to you first, Erin.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, a narrative rooted in reality, which is important, is really like the foundation of the company there. And there's, in marketing, one of the things that I love about marketing is at the core, it's storytelling, and it's storytelling to different constituents. I know many of us that work in health, you are in a multi-sided, marketplace with sometimes payers, physicians, patients, of course. And I think a narrative is so important because it's really your access point to your customer, and having it be one that is both based in reality and a real value exchange between you and your constituents, but also larger initiatives and narratives that the company is interested in. Just some of the things we talked about both with John and Nick introducing themselves is what are those broader like North Stars, and what are you really looking to change and evolve as an organization in health? We have so many opportunities to do that, because despite it being such a mature industry in many of the various countries that we live in, there's still so much work to do to put the consumer first, or even make patients consumers. And speaking for the US, we could definitely do a better job of that here. So I just feel like that narrative and that positioning and building that brand trust is key to future success.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, and I suppose in terms of with this narrative, not only for your customers and everything, but for when it comes to investors and getting valuation as our overriding topic, it's important. I think we've talked about this before, but as the journey of the business moves on, there's always kind of more to develop and for buyers and investors to see that. I know you've been kind of through the startup world, haven't you, Erin? So what can you kind of elaborate on that point as well?
Yeah, I mean, and the narrative is like that, so we make decisions so often, with like, our like hearts and minds sometimes. And narrative, that's what a great seller is really creates that demand and that need. And what is that sale that is like almost emotional. And I think when you're, building an organization and building a company, that narrative and like what problem you solve for is kind of the entry point to the organization overall. So I would, imagine investors, look at companies, just similar to looking at resumes for roles that you have open or so on. And that why is kind of like really that first interaction point.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important, particularly in health tech, because it's obviously a very mission driven like sector. And the why is so important. And Nick, I'm sure you can elaborate on this, the why and the kind of problem to solve as well when it comes to health techs and in particular Flow Health.
Sure. And unlike John, I haven't been working in health tech for 10 years. I've only been working in health tech for 10 months. But I've been working in technology for 20 plus years. And I think, I do remember a pitch meeting I went to about 6 or 7 years ago, working with a very different organization where we had all of the building blocks. We had compound annual growth rate, we had solid user growth, we had great unit economics, we had all of those things. And we were flying high on that stuff. And I remember the first pitch meeting, the investor just saying, so tell me what you're here to do. Where do you want to get to in 5 years? And we kind of went, it was a kind of real big moment for me, and kind of just being torn down on mission and vision in that, if you like, as you said, like the topic here is how to increase your HealthTechs valuation through marketing. And I think there's a functional way of doing that, right? Which is the how you market to your customers and how you grow your customer base, right? That's obvious. Having good unit economics, having good lifetime value versus customer acquisition costs, all of that stuff. But the storytelling that Erin was talking about, that's also really, really important too. And if you think about two companies with equal unit economics and with very similar like cap decks and financial statuses and all of that stuff, one that is solving a very tangible problem that an investor can relate to and can plug into, I think will always win. And I think with Flow Health, the way it's evolved is that, Flow was started with a very, simple proposition, which was to have a more useful way to track your period. But in investigating female health and investigating menstrual health, I think what was found was a much deeper headache, which was, I think, best encapsulated by something I read recently in a study done by York University, where one of the people they interviewed said that they were suffering from particularly bad cramps that month. And they'd gone in to see their doctor, who was a male doctor, who simply said, well, you've had your period for so long, why aren't you used to that now? And to me, that encapsulated everything that Flow is there to solve. It's female health, specifically menstrual health, is undervalued, underfunded, overlooked. And most traditional health services are there for if you break a leg, or if you've got a life-threatening problem, or if you've got the flu, or something like that. But that day-to-day managing of symptoms, that's been completely overlooked and, a little bit gaslit in areas as well. And so suddenly what I think Flow discovered, and I've only been with them 10 months, but certainly this is what I've learned from speaking to customers, is that the real problem is those day-to-day issues, which have, that women for hundreds of years have been told to put up with, that's not good enough. Not only is it not good enough, but there is a solution to how you can live with that better every day. And hopefully that's such a universal value proposition that investors can really tag into it and understand it. So yeah, having a problem to solve, having a headache for your painkiller, I think is super, super important.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. I think Erin and I were nodding the whole way through that, weren't we? But it's really true, especially when it comes to obviously what you're doing. And there's loads of people commenting as well. I'm getting really distracted by all the comments, which is great. People are chiming in a lot. I think like you said, having a headache to the painkiller, and it's not just a simple thing of, oh, I can just track my like cycle on an app, but actually this will genuinely help people that have been gaslit to an extent, or being kind of pushed to the side. Maybe others haven't understood what's going on. So I think that's really important. And Erin, back to your point, I think that's something that you've mentioned as well, John, but even investors, they're still human and they will have an emotional response to that. And that's something that hopefully everyone can understand, because 50% of the world will go through these kind of things. So John, it would be good to come to you on this point of kind of around the narrative, and especially when it's tying into sort of valuation and speaking to investors.
Yeah, you hit it. We're all emotional creatures, regardless of our business roles or, the context in which we are engaging with the narrative. But I think, when we talk about a narrative for a company, the overarching narrative is solely for your investors and your employees. I think with consumers, the brand identity and the individual marketing pieces you're creating are what matter. And when you have an overarching narrative, that helps your team create consistent pieces. But like, I can't tell you what Apple's overarching narrative is anymore. I can tell you about their brand identity. I can tell you about individual campaigns, and I'm sure internally they know that's rolling up to a narrative. But I think with investors and in the startup world, having that concise narrative. I mean, look, at the end of the day, there are two narratives that, there's really one narrative that investors care about, and that is a story that begins with somebody giving you money and ends with so many people giving you money that you IPO. And that's the story. But you want to tell that in an interesting way. I think to everyone's points here, you want to show the problem you're solving and that there is a need to solve it, and that you're solving it in an interesting way. And then, they make decisions based on two sets of facts. One is the financials, and you can show that there's a pathway here. The other one is buzz. WeWork had horrible financials from day one, but they raised billions because there was so much buzz. And that's where I get into this emotional creatures. And so, you can create the buzz, which ideally should lead to good financials, by really understanding your marketplace and thriving there. So I think when you're raising your seed round and your A round, obviously you don't have that yet, and you have to be very clear. Like, here is the problem that we are solving. Here's why that matters. I think the company I'm at now, Meru, had been around for several years and started with a big clinical foundation, really focused entirely on clinical validation and studies and making the clinical case for the product. There wasn't really a narrative around. I think the founders knew exactly what problem they were solving, which is that mental health care, especially in the US, is everything runs to drugs. 25% of Americans are on pharmaceuticals. Face-to-face therapy, for the most part, hasn't evolved much since the days of Sigmund Freud. And so I came in and said, well, look what we've done here. We've got this mind-body connection with wearable devices. We're doing a 12-week gated intervention that in a lot of clinical studies has better outcomes than traditional therapy, or far better than pharmaceuticals. And so what we've really done is like, we have a narrative around a fourth wave of mental health care. And we can show people that first wave was Sigmund Freud and traditional talk therapy. Second wave was pharmaceuticals. Third wave was telehealth, which was just a digital skin on those first two. We're doing something fundamentally different by connecting mind and body and treating mental health care as an intervention, a brief intervention instead of an ongoing treatment. Some people need the ongoing treatment, but about 85% of people don't. And so then suddenly you've got this narrative that investors are like, oh my God, this is a new category. Like, that's really exciting. And it also gives a rallying cry internally when we're creating assets. It is really leaning into this mind-body connection and the differentiators and establishing this category. And then investors and the board are like, yes, I get that right away. But where that really matters is that it gives us a North Star, to Erin's point, when we go out to market and create our marketing assets.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's always like really just good to hear about the mental health tech space, because I did a LinkedIn Live a couple of months ago all around mental health tech. And at some points you feel like, is it becoming saturated and a lot of the businesses doing similar things, which like it's fine. I mean, everybody kind of needs it at this point. But yeah, it's interesting to hear about like having that sort of slightly different approach. So yeah, no, that's really, really important. Something else that I wanted to kind of touch on, which is I suppose slightly, obviously I think about it a lot because I'm in recruitment and I work with candidates and everything. So and I think I've touched on this with you guys before, but inevitably when you're in a startup and all of you have been, and I'm sure marketing gets involved in lots of different things. You might not always just do what like the what you're there to maybe set out to do. Employer branding is obviously another strand of marketing, and finding the right people for a startup is so important to your valuation, to the business, just to everything. I think personally, I think people are everything to a business. Have any of you ever got involved with employer branding? We've got like somebody dedicated at Storm 3 just to hire, like to help hire our people. And how does that work, like, especially when you're in a kind of smaller startup?
Yeah, I mean, I can take that one first. I think you're absolutely right that the spectrum of marketing and what marketing gets involved in is so broad, and I feel like it's increasingly become more broad with the prevalence of technology and understanding that's how you're really scaling and finding efficiencies and being able to reach as many of your customers at one time without that like operational, lift. And I think overall, I think employer branding is key. I think it's a core function of like corporate strategy. I agree with you, Perrin, that people are everything and the right people are everything. And I'm sure we've all made the mistake of just that kind of like butts and seats strategy of like, oh, I just need someone to do this. And you realize that is not what you need. And so I think that, at Sermo and then in previous roles that I've had as well, the marketing team is very involved in what the corporate brand strategy is and, what good we're doing for this healthcare industry and how we're pulling that through, not only to our customers, to our, users and physicians that we work with in that community on a daily basis, but certainly, future colleagues that we might have and talent that we're looking to just constantly build that network. So it's something that's really important. And, I've firsthand seen not only, at Sermo, but at other companies, but specifically at Sermo, where this wasn't something perhaps that was overly invested in 5, 6, 7 years ago. Since I've been on board, a real shift in the perception, both internally and externally of the company. And it's so powerful. Again, that like telling the story and why, people should be proud to work with, in this case, Sermo or even, have an interview. So it's pretty amazing to see that shift.
Yeah, I can even speak on that. Like I see it a lot with clients, obviously, and so many are so like their employer brand is so important. And it makes people excited when they do interview there because they've heard about the business, they've heard about the good things that they're doing, especially if they're like candidates, that have come from maybe outside of health tech and then they're going into it. And there's that layer of, oh wow, this company's doing amazing things, but then there's another layer of like, it's actually like, I want to say the word cool, it's probably not the right word, but like, it's cool, I want to work there. And we see it even internally at Storm 3 and and our group, Levin Group. So we have hired, I think this, Erin, because I'm sure I've spoken to you about it, but when I started, so this was April last year, there was 42 people and we're just over 700 now. So we've hired a lot of people. Yeah. And such a huge part of that is employer branding. We have to be the place that you want to work. And and having like a vision and a mission, even us, we're not health tech, but, having a narrative and having and actually caring is really, really important to kind of set you apart. So I think, and that's our marketing team. I mean, our marketing team get involved in so much. They're basically like sales and operations and just everything. Yeah. So I know it's the same for all of you. But yeah, I think I kind of wanted to touch on that because that's something that we've obviously spoken about before. And yeah, I mean, have you got involved in that as well, Nick and John, in terms of like employer branding for Flo and for Mary?
Yeah, absolutely. At all of my companies, and it's huge in the startup space. Like, I think, if you are an IBM or something, you can afford to have some more transactional relationships with some employees, and somebody's got a title of, Java engineer level 3 or something. Um, and that's fine, and it works for a lot of people. But in the startup space, to your point, when you're going to end up doing some sales and some marketing and whatever else, and so people have to be bought in to the mission there. And I think also just generally, generationally, that's becoming a lot more important as well. People want meaning in their jobs. So that gets back to, what I said earlier about the company narrative being more important almost internally than externally. Is you want people who are bought into the mission and exciting and feeling like what they're doing matters and they're part of. I always say that Meru is not a product, it's a movement. And that, that we want to transform how people think about these things. And so, yeah, that narrative and that internal branding and the employee branding it's vital as a startup, and especially in tech when there's a dearth of talent. Everybody's fighting for the same engineers, so you've got to have a pretty special story there.
I love Meru is not a product, it's a movement. I'm going to steal that.
I just wrote it down. We all just depend our companies.
I'm still free.
For anyone not watching this webinar, John, I won't credit you, but thank you. I adore that. That's great. Well, and I think I remember an old CEO once said to me, "Everybody works on the product," and it really struck with me because someone who works in customer care, for example, answering email, that's part of the product, right? Someone who's changing the App Store homepage, that's part of the product. Product managers obviously work on the product as well, but everybody works on the product. And kind of by flip side to it is, well, everybody works on the brand as well. And I think everybody, whether you are a Scala engineer or whether you are a brand marketing manager, the brand is the experience and how people, and I think we focus on what we work on between us and the product, but what happens between the product and the customer, that's the brand experience. Now, for employer brand, I think that goes one level further in that you can put a bunch of mission and vision statements up on the wall. You can talk about concepts like work hard, play hard, or the work-life balance, or all of these things. But ultimately, the way people will feel after they interview is like, did I like the people? And I think certainly with my teams, what I've always kind of tried to focus on and try to focus on in myself as well is how I interview and how people feel after they interview. Like, are they genuinely interested to come and work at the company? Now they're selling to me as much as I'm selling to them, but knowing that that's an exchange and that they might go and talk to someone in the industry and say, oh, you know what, I went and interviewed there and that CMO is not a nice guy. Like, no, everything that you do matters there. Everything that you do matters for sure. And so I think about a customer brand being holistic, I think it is with an employer brand as well. I think it's not just about the people team or the employer brand team if you're big enough and lucky enough to have one. It's about the entire experience. And what John was saying about fighting for engineering talent, which is the struggle that we're all in. I think it really depends. I think then it comes down to where your base is as well. I think because certainly when I've worked for companies for whom the key engineering talent is either based in the Bay Area or in London or somewhere really competitive, that just makes it's twice as hard. It's twice as hard, honestly, twice as hard. However, I worked for a brilliant company whose engineering headquarters was in Ghent in Belgium, and that company I worked for was one of the biggest Belgian companies. It was one of their kind of internet heroes, and that was really able to attract and retain talent. Similarly, with Flow Health, most of our engineering talent is based in Lithuania, in Vilnius, where Flow Health is a pretty big deal. I like to think we're a big deal everywhere, but maybe not as big a deal as a Facebook or a Google when it comes to offering those graduate salaries. And so I think it is also about. I think when it comes to hiring and retaining talent, especially engineering, it does matter where you are as well.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I think as well, going back to your point of when you do an interview, no matter who you are, even if you're, say, the VP of engineering, for example, that is the brand, and that is also marketing, and we always advise clients that the first interview should probably just be half an hour of just talking and kind of just getting the candidate excited about the opportunity, because even if you decide after that, oh look, they might not be a right fit, if they had a really great experience, they'll go away and tell their friends and tell other people, oh, I didn't get that job, or it wasn't right for me, or whatever, but it was so nice to speak to that person. And it's really true. It really goes around. So I really like that you touched on that, because that's something that I really preach all the time. I think as well that kind of ties quite nicely into kind of our next point is that each of you have slightly different customers. And I know we've obviously spoken about the fact that really everyone there is that emotional kind of response, but I suppose the differing of Flow Health very much is really D2C. But then Sermo and kind of Meru, I know is kind of more to providers, and then Sermo more to physicians. So how do you each feel, with differing customers? How does it differ when marketing in health tech? What's it kind of like? I'll come to you first, John, because I know you've been in slightly different backgrounds in health tech.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think it's one of the big opportunities in, we are in this B2B2C model. Like we sell into employers and health plans, but then our engagement is still at the employee level. Now, quite often when you're going through those B2B channels, your marketing gets intermediated. You better go through their employee list or their HR department to get to their employees. So there's also, you want to get to a scale that justifies normal D2C brand marketing as well to generate demand on that front. But you also, historically, these B2B buyers have been approached from a marketing perspective as just sort of office drones. And, me getting back to the point that we're all consumers, we're all emotional animals, and you can bring in consumer grade marketing experiences into a B2B channel. And the only reason it hasn't been done before is because it hasn't been done before. Like, it should be done. And so there's a big opportunity to understand the emotional journey people go through when they're making decisions, and understanding that, whether you are filling out an RFP, or you're doing a post on LinkedIn, or you're writing a white paper, or just an ad, or whatever the case may be, the easiest thing for any reader to do is stop reading. And so you cannot waste a word, a sentence, and any opportunity to and that's again why you want to go back to that overarching narrative, but understanding that, if you can create a moment of delight or aha, even with those B2B buyers. And then with the B2B buyers, they are obviously in a bigger, you're not buying sneakers. You have a buying committee you've got to go back to, but get them to emotionally make the decision first, and then provide the research and data to let them justify the decision that they've kind of already made in their mind, which is sort of how we, when you are buying sneakers or a watch or whatever the case may be, it's emotional first. And then you think, do I need this? Like, what can I really afford this? And you start going through the justifications. So, so much B2B marketing starts with the justification. And if there's emotion there at all, it's an afterthought. And so inverting that is where you can really win. And then getting them excited about the opportunity to engage their employees and turn these HR and benefits leaders into heroes, which they aren't usually. Usually HR is where you go to complain. And so if you can turn them into a hero and show them that opportunity, you can really win. And then in this HR and benefit space, if you look at it to the employees, it's, a flyer in the break room. It's just, you're giving people spinach for dessert. And so if you can then go in and say, okay, if an Apple or a company like this were in employee benefits, how would they market it? And it wouldn't be with a sad flyer with some clip art in the break room. You would do something kind of inventive. So.
Yeah, I really like that point. As you were saying, even if you were buying sneakers, I was thinking, even if you were buying an electric guitar or a drum set.
Exactly right.
But yeah, I suppose, Nick, it would be good to come to you, because obviously it's you're kind of one closer to the customer at Flow Health.
Yeah, sorry. What specifically would you like to know to know then?
Yeah, I suppose on this point, it's just, how do you feel like it differs when it comes to the marketing? And I'm going back to the narrative again, because I know we've spoken about that a lot, but like differing from, say how John and Mary, it's very much B to C.
Yeah.
But obviously Flow's direct really is it's for people to actually like get it on their phone.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, the key thing with Flow, with starting an app, that it's going to be something that is useful for a lot of people and has relatively low lifetime value. When I'm saying lifetime value, I don't mean that it's a valueless product, not at all. But we don't sell something that is hundreds or thousands of dollars. That you need to reach a lot of people for it to be successful. And I used to work for a social network called Nextdoor. Similarly, the idea there was to make sure that we got that distribution was part of the product development process and was thought about from day one. And I think if you're in a D2C business that is a app-based subscription business where you're selling a digital product, you need to have enough monthly active usage. You need to have enough engagement in your product to sell your service. Now Flow has a very natural one in that Flow offers a premium subscription product, but for free we offer obviously period tracking and period predictions. And so we have a natural monthly retention mechanic in that we'll give you predictions around your cycle. And that brings you back. And every time we bring you back, we're trying to show you a little bit more value to try and upsell you to our subscription product, which will give you much more day-to-day health insights. It will help you conceive. It will help you identify problems. It'll be much more of a well-rounded essential health partner. But in terms of kind of what the difference is for an app like Flow as to a brand that's going B2B to C, for us, there's got to be from the off, there's got to be something baked in that helps with distribution. Now with Flow, it was started at a time where a lot of people were looking for period tracking apps. And so that was about findability. It was about app store optimization. It was about making sure that when people came across Flow, it was seen as the most medically credible. It was seen as the most accurate. But we're getting to a stage where 6 out of 10 US women aged 16 to 45 use one of these apps already. And a lot of the ones who don't have a reason for not doing so. And so we're getting to late majority for the category. And so suddenly our mission has changed in terms of, okay, well, we've got to convince them to start using Flow instead of the other guys. This isn't a land grab anymore, suddenly. And suddenly, we're looking at our growth going, okay, that's been great year on year. And we still have phenomenal user growth. But I'm looking around the corner here going, okay, well, we need to give people a really good reason to come and use Flow who might already use, say, Apple Health to track their period. It is really important for us. But when I compare it to my other journeys, and all of my journeys have been direct to consumer, I was expecting, I think the key difference for me in the health space, in working in health tech direct to consumer versus a social network or education technology or a marketplace, I think it's about regulation and claims. Obviously, you've got to be super careful in the health space about what you're selling and making sure that the value proposition you're offering someone is medically credible. And I think that's where I'm so thankful that Flow has a brilliant chief medical officer, Anna Kletchkova, and a brilliant science team, a brilliant medical team, and over 100 doctors who act as consultants to Flow to make sure that we've got real advice from real experts. Because there's a lot of information out there on the web on health, and I think we consider ourselves to be a little bit of a not a filter for that, but you can go around in circles trying to identify a symptom sometimes, and we've got some of the best medical experts on our books to help you with those. And so I think that's the real difference to me coming from marketing a marketplace or a social network is you've got to make sure that your claims are medically credible as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Actually, that's like a whole another conversation that we've had. I did a different LinkedIn Live that we kind of discussed around like the regulation and how important it is in health tech. And then I suppose, Erin, coming to you with Sermo, obviously again a different kind of customer base. And how do you feel that differs now you've heard sort of Mary and Flo? How do you feel that differs in terms of your marketing?
Yeah, so much of what John and Nick said definitely resonated. Where I spoke earlier about this, 2-3-sided marketplace. Like, our customers are our physicians. That is our community. That is why we come to work every day. Is providing them with tools and the safe and at times they can be anonymous space to be able to like share information, open up patient cases, request second opinions on cases they're having trouble, perhaps solving, or share wisdom of something they just treated. And, but in particular, when John spoke about the like hero aspect of it, I think that, understanding the value drivers of your customers, so for physicians, they are increasingly burdened with more and more administrative work. They have less time to see patients. There is a huge and very meaningful and important discussion around burnout, and they're being asked to do more with less, just like we are. But what they do versus what we do is very different, and it's a different type of, taxation on one's, like emotional and physical being. So there's some real meaningful dialogue around mental health and physicians going on. So I think it's like, providing them with those tools where the value is just almost immediate. I mean, it's so critical that that value exchange is immediate. Otherwise, everything for a consumer's time is kind of competition. They could go to other health related, outlets, or they could just, say, oh, I'm going to spend some more time reading the paper or engaging in, something, exercise or something like that. So that's how we, like the community of physicians and that value exchange, we established a medical advisory board to really kind of provide those insights and be kind of like a governing or guidepost body for our product roadmaps and just how we're communicating and providing that value to physicians. But then, specifically around like the hero is that the healthcare industry that we work with, whether it's payers or, life science companies, medical device companies, we're really kind of like an extension of their team in a lot of ways. And like, how do we provide them the value? There are paying customers, but I feel like that value exchange is very different. The level, the transactional nature, I feel like has really changed over the last decade or so that I've been working in these space and working with this profile of clients. It is like, things are moving so quickly. Pharma is adapting and shifting and kind of evolving how they market and how they speak to both physicians and consumers, patients, that, really being an extension of their team to have them be that hero internally, whether you're working with an agency and you're providing them with new information around social intelligence or new insights from physicians that they can go back to use to win business, or you're working direct with a pharmaceutical company to help them understand their brand treatment perception in the marketplace and how physicians are talking about, either the brand or the drug class or molecules. Like, so I feel like that is all something that it's multifaceted, but, overarchingly, it's very cyclical, and there's this kind of like clean ecosystem to be able to bring those different constituents together.
Yeah, it's interesting because like each of you, it's different, but then it kind of all comes back to the same thing in the end. We're kind of all working back to the same.
Yeah, they're like these guiding principles almost of,
it
is really interesting.
Yeah, of course. We've got probably about 5 more minutes, and then I think a few people are asking questions, and we can come to sort of questions at the end. But I wanted to kind of finish on something that's, again, slightly bit of a tangent, but something that I end up speaking to people a lot about is, especially when a company's a startup, it's like, when do you hire a marketing team? Often marketing agencies will be being utilized. When do you hire someone? Do you hire someone really senior to come in and do marketing and then build everything out? What's all of your opinions on that? I think it will be helpful for anyone that's on here that's maybe a smaller startup that hasn't got a marketing team yet. When do you think they should hire a marketing team and actually get them in-house?
The day of founding, and I mean that. Without that marketing insight, I think founders have this if we build it, they will come mentality, and that's just not the case. And if I write it, they will read it mentality. Again, that is not the case. And nobody ever thinks that they added marketing to the leadership function too soon. But the startup landscape is littered with the corpses of companies that added it too late. It's got to be in there very early. And I would say, like, if you want a case study in moving from no narrative to narrative, if you look at the Meru Health website right now, so I joined the company 6 months ago, and we're launching a new website end of day today. So you look at the website right now, and then look at it tomorrow, and you can see moving from no narrative to narrative and what that looks like in practice. But the company is already seeing how things could have been different with this sort of narrative and category creation a couple of years ago. So, marketing seems like an expense, but if you do it right, every dime that you spend comes back dressed up as a dollar. So yeah, you can't add it too soon.
You can't have it too soon. Yeah, I thought that sounds like the general consensus. I mean, and Erin and Nick, what about you? And Erin, I know you've hired a lot of people into your marketing team, especially at Sermo. So yeah, what's it like for you? What's your opinion?
Yeah, we certainly have hired quite a few people over the last 2 years. And, I think when you're thinking about expansion, like when you have that product market fit, and whether it's a seed round or Series A, Series B, I mean, that cash infusion is growth oriented. And, growth usually looks like getting your message and that value prop out to more and more people, so that that is definitely, the core attribute of a marketing function. So I agree with John that it can never be too early, really. And also marketing is a connector, or at least it should be, throughout the organization. And there's even deep marketing relationships that go on with, like, the finance team to understand. I mean, in our case, like, and that is the one that's always like, whoa, how does that work? But I mean, that really is so important as well. Or we talked about the HR team. So everyone thinks like marketing is, marketing to the customer and talking about like sell sheets or PowerPoints or or your search or social campaigns. And it really is a connector throughout the organization to kind of bring everyone together, moving, in the right direction.
Yeah, I think my take on that is the kind of people you hire to get you from 0 to 10,000 users is very different from the type of people you hire, I think, when you're getting to scale up stage, or even when you're getting to kind of Series A, Series B. And early on, you want to find people who you can afford, based on what money you got to spend. But you need to find people who are T-shaped, right? Who are happy to go and dig in and find out how to make a Facebook ad or a TikTok video, but also can scrap together an HTML email for you. Now, the challenge I've become interested in as I've watched companies grow is, like, what happens to those folks when suddenly there's an email marketing department and it used to be 20% of their job? And I think there's a couple of things there. I think firstly, like, people who get in earlier tend to get better equity. And so if they are people who are growth minded, they'll be like, great, I've been doing this kind of in a 20% way. I'm really excited for someone to come in and do it properly. And because often what you'll see at that point is some people will be a little bit afraid to give up their Legos. They'll be like, and that's where you can get stuck as a company, right? You can have people who are like, well, I set that up, I should keep it. Like, I should just grow underneath me. And that's not always the best way to grow. And so you want to look for people who have that brilliant growth mindset and are willing to do different things, but then happy to kind of like own things temporarily and give them up as you grow, because you'll probably be able to lift them as you rise, right? Those are the people who you'll always find something for those people to do when you get your like very vertical product marketing teams, like marketing operations, all of those teams that come in later, marketing technology, etc. But those people who act as scrappy all-rounders in the beginning, if they've got a real growth mindset, they'll grow with the company.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, it's just like those kind of people are often so good because they, this might be the wrong word, but like control freaks, really want to get involved with everything. Like, I can do this, I can do that. And it's a great thing. That's what you need in a startup. But then, like you said, when others come in and it needs to scale, and there needs to be scalability. Obviously, one person can't just do everything because it's not scalable.
Well, I think
kind of
as well,
out, isn't it?
Sorry to interrupt there.
And
I think
yeah.
In that, having been like, employee 4 of a company and employee 400 of a company, like when I was employee 4 of a company, there's a lot of dark days. There's a lot of stuff you try that just doesn't work. There's a lot of emails you send where no one clicks it, right? There's just stuff that you need a lot of positive energy in the room at that stage, right? Where at a later stage you might need, someone who's much more programmatic. But yeah, like as to someone's asking what should be the primary focus of a company's first marketing hire, I'd say like hiring for energy is a really good one. Hiring for smarts, hiring for energy, hiring for intellectual honesty as well. Like someone who's not just going to show you the good stuff, someone who's going to be honest about what's happening.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. I've seen it so much, even with with Storm 3, that like the energy and positivity and people that want to get involved with everything. Actually, that's the best thing to have right at the beginning. But then it's just, and all of those people, like you said when you said, oh, what happens to those people? But I think as soon as they realize, oh wait, it's going to scale, then it's just, you're right, they just can rise above and actually be a positive force and be like, and help everybody else really when it grows. But yeah, I think that was one of the questions. Moving on to the questions nicely, so thank you for coming to that. Erin and John, what would you say what should be the primary focus of a company's first marketing hire?
I would say growth, but how that to Nick's point, the growth mindset is key. But I think that's what you've got to be doing, right? You've got to be growing as a company, and so somebody who's going to be really inventive and who can do the emails, do the social media engagement, figure out some brand positioning, do the research in whatever way you can to figure out product market fit. Like the focus has to be growth, and then to Nick's point, like somebody who's kind of T-shaped.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, growth, and I think in your first marketer or the first group of people, I mean, you're really proving out your existence every day, and so I think being really pointed towards different objectives, I think that agility, and there was a really great article recently, I guess, pulling on like a Jack Kerouac quote, I think, about like killing your darlings is like really just not have like being able to move through the testing process quickly and adapt to what you're learning from the marketplace, I think is really key.
Yeah, I think that's really good answers, to be honest. And then another question that came through is business and marketing in general are very much about identifying and targeting a niche customer base. Healthcare solutions, in my opinion, need to address healthcare equity. The solution should reach as many people as possible, even if they apply to a selected group. How does a healthcare startup using modern day digital health marketing address this issue? And that was quite a long one. Does anyone want to take?
So I'm just reading the question again to make sure I understand it.
You read it? Yeah. Do you want me to? Are you reading it? Or... I think they're inside. It was from Amelia.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of understand the question. Is like, yeah, the health technology can give. I think about that in terms of access. I spent 2021 working in education technology for an app called Lingumi, which helped children between the ages of 2 and 6 learn English as a second language. It's a fantastic app. If anyone doesn't have English as a first language and wants to teach their kids, I highly recommend it. And we used to talk a lot there about access, about the fact that English lessons are expensive and they're vital for some kids living in Southeast Asia if they want to learn to speak English without an accent when they're older. And I think one of the ways we're responding to that Flow is I'm tremendously lucky that we have 50 million monthly active users, many of whom are in countries with less health literacy than others. And kind of the way we're looking at that is, those people aren't going to buy a subscription for $40 a year to Flow Health. So we're just going to give it to them for free. And we're just going to say to the folks in the West, hey, you're paying for it. Which I think, you might see that as, I don't know if it's fair or unfair, I don't know. But I think it comes back to our purpose. We're there to build a better future for female health. And, nearly 50% of Iranian teenage girls think that menstruation is a disease. The amount of disparity in health literacy, even in countries that we think are really, really developed, is absolutely huge. And I think the person asking the question is right. The barrier to entry for us is still having a fairly good smartphone. And I think when Facebook reached that maximum, they were like, okay, how do we get more people online in India? So I think if and when Flow Health is lucky enough to cover 500 million monthly active users, that'll be our next challenge, is how do we reach people that don't have really good smartphones?
Yeah, thank you for coming back to that one. I think that, and thank you for the question, Amelia. I think there was another one that came through, which was, again, going back to sort of hiring, but how important do you feel a healthcare marketing background is when hiring for a marketing team in health tech?
I can take a swing at this one. I place kind of sometimes equal value on that insider-outsider perspective. And I think that, there's definitely, especially in working directly with HCPs and life science companies, there is some, empirical knowledge that can be really beneficial to getting started in the role and understanding the nuances, very different. A pharmaceutical company is very different than a CPG company and so on. But I also think some of the best hires and top performers that I've worked with have had that outsider perspective and did the work to understand the marketplace and the job that they were taking, given their lack of experience in that category or vertical. So it has to be that curious first. If you are looking at talent from outside, that curiosity is so key in really respecting the nuances of the marketplace. But sometimes someone just comes in and brings experience from a different fintech or a different type of vertical can be just so impactful and eye-opening. I mean, we're emotional creatures as we've covered, but we're also creatures of habit sometimes. And it's very easy just to be this is the way it's done. And that's not always the case. And those are kind of the really exciting moments.
Yeah, that's something.
I agree with Erin on the curiosity thing. Sorry, just doubling down on that. I think I've hired a bunch of people at Flow, some of whom haven't had health tech or femtech, as we call ourselves, kind of experience, but have had a real interest in the area and have just been able to grasp it, and sometimes bring it. We've also got a bunch of people in the company who have brought that with them, but sometimes they might have worked for a subscription business, or they might have worked in D2C in something that's got a lot of monthly active users. As long as there's some thread there, I don't think it's super. I think Erin's policy is a good one.
And I would add to that, and I have a soft spot, having spent 25 years in consumer media, I have a soft spot for journalists anyway. But when you are especially coming out of magazines, when people used to read magazines, if you're writing a 3,000, 5,000 word feature story, you have to come in and have the curiosity and the sort of intellectual wherewithal to become sort of a temporary expert on sometimes very, very difficult topics. And that kind of background serves you really well in marketing. So finding people who have that track record of diving in and getting up to speed quickly. But I would say if you're working in US healthcare, those people are wonderful to add to the team, but your first hire probably does need the healthcare experience, because the US healthcare system especially it's structurally inequitable. The incentives are all misaligned. No two people pay the same price. If you are working in an FDA regulated environment, there's also all of that stuff, all those hoops you have to jump through. So if you don't have experience with that, it's pretty tricky.
Yeah, and I think that's something we come across, even if it's not necessarily in marketing. If we're hiring for marketers, it could be in sales and product and things like that. I think often, especially if the business is that, or the health tech they're going into, there's something that's really highly regulated in there, they need to get FDA approval, then usually they need people that do have that experience. But then coming back to Erin, I've seen in the past that there is, if somebody is curious and really interested and willing to learn, they can really bring a fresh set of eyes as well, and bring something that you never would have thought of. So I suppose the answer is then just to like have a mix. Or like John said, maybe the first hire has the background, but then you get someone else in. So yeah, I think that's probably like the overarching answer, isn't it? I don't know if there were any other questions, and I think we've got, with sort of 3 minutes to coming to an end. So
there was a tricky question for me that I'm happy to answer if you like.
Oh wait, yes, sorry, I'm looking in the wrong chat.
Okay.
Okay, so Flow Health question: how did you handle Western customers who pay once they found out that others get the same value for free?
Well, sure. Good question. The Flow subscription package is not at all the same as the value that a free user gets. We give a month's free trial to people on the way in. If they want to try it, that rolls over into subscription, and opt-out trial that's fairly common in the industry, and it's fairly low price as well. I think it's $40, $40 if it's not on sale. But if you're not a paying user, you don't get access to the full content library. You don't get access to a bunch of the chatbots and health dialogues. You do get access for free to the period tracking, though. That comes in as free. So hopefully that's clear.
Yeah, thank you. And that's really important. I use a period tracking app, but not subscribed. But I always see that I should subscribe. I'm like, yeah, I should subscribe. You get so much more. But yeah, that's helpful. I think that is all the questions now. So yeah, I suppose just to kind of wrap up, thank you so much, all of you, for joining. I really genuinely appreciate it. Really enjoyed the conversation. And hopefully everyone else has. We've had a lot of people commenting and things on the side. So yeah, just thank you. And I'm sure if anyone has any other questions, this automatically records because it's a LinkedIn Live, so it will become a video on LinkedIn. So if there's any other questions afterwards for anyone that's watching now, you can comment, or I'm sure reach out to any of us. So yeah, just thank you.